Donald Trump's team secretly agreed with Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro's entourage, leading to his quick capture and removal from the country. This conclusion was reached by experts from Bild and others, and you'll be surprised to find out who actually helped Trump. More precisely, the point is that after the capture of dictator Nicolas Maduro, reports have been accumulating that cast doubt on the official version of events. They indicate that the United States attack may have been far less unexpected than it seems. And the question of power may have been decided even before the United States operation, and not in favor of the Venezuelan people. Also, Americans are now openly discussing how Venezuela will live under United States control. I'll share a quick spoiler at the start of the episode. Delcy Rodríguez, the current president of Venezuela, apparently had a deal with the Americans even before the capture of Nicolas Maduro. My name is Alexei Pecci. Let's discuss this topic together, but before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, like this episode, and leave any comment you want. Also, subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pecci News. The link is in the description of this video. There we publish breaking news as it comes in. The White House is already directing Venezuela's new authorities, and they don't seem to mind. For example, today Republican Senator Scott directly stated, quote, "This is the beginning of change in Venezuela. Then we will restore order in Cuba, Nicaragua will also be put in order, and next year we will have a new president in Colombia." At the same time, the United States is seizing Shadow Fleet tankers, and United States Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth directly stated that it is Washington who will decide which tankers are allowed to enter Venezuela and which are not. And finally, the Donald Trump administration demanded that the acting president of Venezuela, Delcy Rodríguez, expel Russia, China, Iran, and Cuba from Venezuela, as well as break economic ties with them. And now, sources in the White House have reported that Venezuela must agree to exclusive cooperation with the United States in oil production and give preference specifically to the states when selling heavy oil. The Venezuelan authorities also need to fulfill all these requirements before Washington allows them to produce more oil. And now, the publication Bild writes, and I quote, "At the center of the political thriller in Venezuela is the former vice president and current president, Delcy Rodríguez. She immediately seized power. After the arrest, Maduro has the Venezuelan army's support and pleases the United States. At first accusing the Americans of barbarism, she suddenly offered cooperation to the United States President Donald Trump. It looked strange, but the entire power structure in Venezuela, although made up of former allies." And here comes an interesting point. Remember how we discussed that power in the country has actually passed into the hands of the Rodríguez family? Delcy Rodríguez became president, and her brother Jorge Rodríguez took control of the local parliament. Later, the army and police also announced that they had taken the side of Rodríguez and supported her as president. So, we understand the Rodríguez family basically runs Venezuela. So, as it turned out, back in October, the Miami Herald newspaper revealed that Delcy Rodríguez and her brother Jorge were negotiating with the Americans about what would happen after Nicolas Maduro. Reportedly, they did this with Maduro's own knowledge. At that time, among other things, they discussed the peaceful departure from power of the dictator Nicolas Maduro. Maduro entrusted Rodríguez and the vice presidents to negotiate with the Americans, saying, "Let's try to come to an agreement." But what did Maduro's vice president know about Trump's plans? Here's the question. Is it possible that Rodríguez knew about Maduro's upcoming arrest and simply made a deal with the Trump administration for a change of power? And here Bild quotes the lawyer Eva Gollinger, who previously advised former Venezuelan leader Hugo Chavez on foreign policy issues. And here Gollinger says, quote, "When the negotiations between the Rodríguez siblings and the Americans became more difficult and the Americans increased military pressure, it seems that Jorge and Delcy started another format of negotiations with Trump's team. In other words, negotiations that have not been publicly reported until now. And this is where a new episode appears, when the pressure on Nicolas Maduro increased and the Americans began sinking ships in the Caribbean. An international media public relations campaign began, aiming to present Delcy Rodríguez as a moderate alternative to Nicolas Maduro and a likely successor to power. And this softening of her image in the media was an obvious part of the attempt to sell her to Donald Trump as an alternative to Maduro, who could provide stability in the country and open Venezuela to American companies. They said yes, Rodríguez is of course from Maduro's team, but she's not as radical and supposedly she hasn't been tainted by anything yet, and such a move could serve the interests of the United States. The former United States ambassador to Venezuela already stated the other day that Washington has no interest in building democracy in Venezuela, they just need a government that will follow orders from Washington. For Trump, it's easier to have Delcy Rodríguez as the head of the country than to carry out a complete regime change, let alone engage in building democracy. All of that is complicated, and Trump most likely doesn't need it. Moreover, Trump firmly rejected all options for opposition power on the very first day. Maria Corina Machado, head of the Venezuelan opposition, urged Venezuelans to await her signal as she was prepared to take power herself. But since then, she's barely been heard from. According to the Washington Post, Trump didn't support Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado because she didn't give him the Nobel Peace Prize. Later, she even stated that she was ready to give him this award, just to get into power. And here we are. Sources from the Washington Post, close to the White House, said that Trump does not want to support Machado because of her decision to accept the Nobel Peace Prize, which the United States leader himself was striving to receive. Earlier, the United States president said Machado will likely struggle to become a leader, noting she lacks support or respect in Venezuela. And now Machado's entire team is completely puzzled. A Venezuelan opposition leader said the United States president's remarks were difficult for many in the opposition. At the same time, he noted that in every transitional period you have to swallow some bitter pills. As a result, on January 3, United States President Donald Trump stated that the United States would govern Venezuela until a safe and proper transition of power is ensured. Trump's quote, "We will govern the country until we can ensure a safe, proper, and prudent transition of power. We don't want interference, so the situation remains unchanged for years. Now the opposition fears Trump has picked someone else." After the initial euphoria from the blow to Maduro, there is growing discontent that the United States president is not seeking to hold elections in Venezuela at all. In opposition circles, some interpret this as a sign of specific agreements between the United States and the regime in Caracas. After all, even if Trump is betting on Rodríguez only during the transitional period, there would at least be a clear position on when and how free elections would be held. There is no such thing. Moreover, these concerns coincide with a report by the New York Times that the United States government does not believe in Maria Machado as the new leader of Venezuela who could replace the current regime. It is reported that Trump's advisors demanded from her last year a plan on how she intends to bring her allies to power if Maduro steps down, but the Americans reportedly got nothing concrete from her. Moreover, the Wall Street Journal writes that the CIA also concluded that Rodríguez and other leaders are better suited to head a transitional government and ensure stability in the short term. In addition, representatives of the current Venezuelan regime allegedly helped the United States remove Maduro by military force. This is already being reported by The Atlantic magazine, and here is its quote. "The small number of American casualties suggests that Washington likely received support within the ranks of the Venezuelan armed forces. This led to the operation's success, which would have been impossible without major help or at least deliberate non-interference from the local military. But who exactly cooperated with the Americans is still unknown." I'll leave it at that for now. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments under this episode, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like this video. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves, everyone. Goodbye. To be continued.